Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. There is a lot of interest on the science of happiness, and it is being introduced in various places. That is why we are producing this series on giving you a lot of information on the science of happiness according to Yoga and Vedanta. I hope this entire series of videos will be helpful to both students and faculty members, and all, of course, all who are interested in getting happiness. So here, I would like to just point out to a few things before we proceed. One thing is, when we try to study happiness as a science, it is beyond logical comprehension, but we all know it is a subjective experience. And at the same time, in our own life, we can see that there are different levels of happiness, different degrees of happiness along those levels. And we have also seen that usually spiritually, from the spiritual standpoint, spiritual happiness is considered superlative, something transcendental, and it is supposed to give the highest joy, because we see this kind of ecstasy in the lives of spiritual personalities. So then what is the entire range of happiness available to us? What are the reaches of higher awareness available to us? All this will be under observation in this series. And you can get a lot of information. Since many are asking for this in various ways, we thought we should bring out a series like this, which is also being required by institutes, many institutes in India. So according to Vedanta, the science of happiness involves a study of the entire experience of happiness which is available to the human experience. We will be studying it bit by bit and using slides. So let me introduce to you the first slide, what we call happiness. Vivekananda says, what we call happiness and good here are but particles of that eternal bliss. So please see the meaning, the tatparya of this is that there is a superlative degree of happiness available to us, and what we are presently engaged with is just a particle of that bliss, he says. So then how do we proceed along these lines? This is what we will see. Please see the next slide. The pursuit of happiness, as you can see, is global. Most of our experiences are subjective, which means they can be beyond measurement, known ways of measuring. But that does not mean they are beyond comprehension, isn't it? Because we have some substantial experience of happiness that we aim at happiness. Now, there are ways of measuring happiness also. Today we have invented scales like the PANAS scale, which will help us measure subjective experiences like happiness. We will go into that. But presently, the study of happiness combines positive psychology, neurophysiology, endocrinology, philosophy, and spirituality. And in the Indian spiritual context, we use two distinct words to describe the entire gamut of happiness available to us. These two words are Sukha and Ananda. Sukha generally means the happiness got through the body and mind, and Ananda is the transcendental level of happiness which is got through spiritual practice. This is a general classification. We will proceed further. Next slide. Now, the whole point is to study happiness as a science. What are the criteria we use in science? Science uses, please look at the slide, rational inquiry based on empirical observation and inference, measurement and quantification, and repeatability and intersubjective verification. Now, how do you apply this to a subjective experience? This is the whole point. By definition, happiness is positive effect, well-being, satisfaction, and fulfillment. How do we apply these criteria of science to this definition? Let us understand this much for the present. What is considered logically comprehensible in science, that is considered true. But what is logically incomprehensible, it does not mean that is false. Something can be logically incomprehensible and yet true. Subjective experiences are like that. They don't fall under the purview of your logic. They have their own logic. But they ring true in your soul. So this is an important point to note in the study of happiness as a science. Next slide, please. The great global debate going on is to find out if our income, talents and skills, good governance, of course health, if all these actually provide for human welfare and growth, should these be the indices for growth, or should happiness levels be the indices for growth? So this is a major point of debate in many countries. In fact, if you have seen that what we consider as GDP today, that itself has been changed by countries like Bhutan, because they believe that happiness should be the actual index of growth and not just your economy. So please watch the slide there. Measurement guidelines and benchmarks from the UN state that we combine qualitative and quantitative methods to provide insights on the level of well-being, happiness or life satisfaction and quality of human life. For this, we need to analyze different aspects of happiness. And this is where we use the PANA scale. And how yoga contributes to this, we will be going deep into this. And then the whole purpose is how to design private and public policy with maximum happiness as the goal. Next slide, please. Look at these determinants of happiness here. They are pretty obvious: absolute income, relative income, consumption patterns, genetics, health, age, time usage, autonomy, self-esteem, aspiration, sense of purpose, civil status, employment status, social comparisons and relationships. All these are considered determinants of happiness normally. But if you observe them closely, you will see they actually provide us with a sense of comfort, physical comfort and mental security. And this leads to a stress-free state relatively, and we call that happiness. But happiness is not just absence of sorrow. Happiness has a definite positive content, and it is in terms of awareness. This only yoga psychology will give you this very, very important insight that happiness is not just absence of sorrow. It is directly proportional to awareness. Ultimately, happiness is an exponential function of your awareness. The more aware the mind becomes, the less space there will be for anxieties, negativities, worries. And that is why the technique of emptying mind, purifying mind, decluttering the mind, all these are important aspects of the meditative process which results in high-level awareness. That is why yoga uses all these processes. Any yoga in any form is working directly on the content of the mind in order to unfold the inner happiness and not merely try to bring in pleasant moods from outside objects. That is considered a level of synthetic joy, which is very limited. So the main purpose in Yoga-Vedanta is to unfold the inherent inner joy and bring fulfillment to human life. So this is one of the most important things we should know about the determinants of happiness in our life. There is a way of increasing the bar of happiness, and that is what yoga is about actually. Because unless you have explored the entire scale of happiness available to the human being, how will you discriminate? So increasing the bar or the metric of happiness through yoga, and it is only possible through yoga, which means you get higher and higher experiences of happiness. You understand there is something called a higher degree of happiness. So for that, there is, in the study, just now it will be a theoretical study, there is actually a ladder of happiness available to the human experience. Just look at the slide which is in front of you. There, you will see that the first image is that of the ladder of happiness, the types of happiness available to the human experience. At the lower rung of ladder is sensory level happiness, the happiness which your senses bring to you. So now we are all quite familiar with what the senses can bring to us, isn't it? But the nature of sense experience is that after a certain point, it only gives revulsion. It is the nature of every sensory experience to give you a sense of revulsion after a certain point. So if you indulge in something beyond a certain point, it will actually create frustration in your life. So this is the first rung of the ladder, sensory experience. Then you have the thought and emotional level. Good thoughts and high level engagement into something, creative thinking, all of this, the beautiful emotions in our minds, all of this gives us a certain degree of happiness. So this is the next rung of the ladder. The rung after that is deep level intellectual activity, which causes absorption or flow. So this level of engagement will spontaneously bring a high degree of happiness into our lives. So this is the next rung of the ladder. Beyond this are the levels of service. See, trying to make somebody happy somewhere can gladden your whole entire system because it gives you a sense of contribution and it is itself deeply engaging. So the happiness of service is beyond the happiness of mere intellectual engagement. Finally, you have the spiritual level of happiness, which is the happiness born of meditation. The whole problem in normal life, ordinary life, is we get stuck at one particular rung of the ladder and we try to optimize happiness there. The idea in yoga is you have to climb the ladder of happiness. Just optimizing it at a particular rung by collecting more objects, like for example sensory happiness. Just by collecting more objects, you cannot optimize happiness there. It is only by moving to the next rung of the ladder that you can optimize happiness. There is a way of raising the metric or bar of happiness, and that is through yoga. You can see clearly in the image which we have put there, 4 rungs of the ladder of happiness have been described. The sensory level happiness, which forms the first rung of the ladder, then the happiness born of thought and emotion, then the happiness born of deep intellectual engagement, the happiness born of service is there after that, and all the levels have not been depicted, but at least the general levels have been depicted. And then you have the highest level of the happiness born of meditation. It's a transcendental kind of joy. Now, sensory happiness has this nature that beyond a certain point, it only causes revulsion. You can't indulge beyond a certain point, and that point is very limited. And as a result, trying to maximize happiness or optimize happiness only at the first rung of the ladder will lead to depression. This is to be understood by oneself. And that is why the way given by yoga is to climb the ladder of happiness. See, the happiness which we get by engaging in deep level thought, creativity, or very beautiful feelings, that is much higher. It's a higher rung of the ladder. And beyond that is deep level intellectual engagement, what is called flow. So this kind of engagement naturally produces a whole amount of joy. And any number of experiments have been carried out to show that service activities give a sense of contributiveness, and that produces a lot of happiness in the system. So the joy born of service is even greater than the intellectual absorption. And of course, spiritual happiness, transcendental joy of meditation, that is the highest rung of the ladder. So what yoga psychology tells us is you have to climb this ladder of happiness in order to taste the higher levels of happiness and not try to maximize, optimize happiness at one particular rung of the ladder. Please try and find out if this is true or not of human life. And yoga also tells us that the evolutionary ladder is inbuilt in our central nervous system and brain. This ladder is not just an external model which has been given on the slide like this. It is actually inbuilt within you. And yoga is meant to generate altered states of awareness which generate higher happiness. That is the purpose of yoga. So climbing this evolutionary ladder through the practices of yoga, through the practice of meditation, discovering higher and higher levels of happiness, this is the way to raise the bar of happiness in human life. If we don't have the maturity to understand this much, then we will waste our life in chasing joys in objects which are only external to us. So that is why exploration of this ladder of happiness and understanding how the ladder is functioning within our own system and getting initiated into any practice of yoga, whether it is through a mantra, whether it is through some worship form. So this is very important in order to raise the metric of happiness. And that is why I have put another image there. Please watch the slide. That is an image of the Shat Chakras in the human body. They clearly show that they are those junction points where awareness can unfold to higher and higher levels. So if the vital energy is concentrated only on the lower chakras, it results only in sensory level, sensual joy. When vital energy is systematically raised, it leads to the highest spiritual unfoldment. In this video, we are just going to discuss the equations of happiness according to positive psychology and yoga psychology. So these are few facts important for us to understand. Martin Seligman gave us this very important equation. Please look at the slide. H is equal to P plus E plus M, where P is pleasure, E is engagement, and M is meaning. However, it is everybody's experience, and as Seligman also quickly found, P is far lesser than M, which is far lesser than meaning. Which means if you have a good level of engagement in your life, intellectual absorption in your life, then pleasure will not mean anything much to you. And if you have deep meaning to whatever you are doing in life, even engagement as a means to happiness will not be required. You can do away with both pleasure and engagement. So meaning is central to human life. If you are doing something deeply meaningful, contributive, substantially important, then you don't need any other means for happiness. So once this understanding came, then next in positive psychology was developed the theory of PERMA, which means there are 5 factors responsible for happiness. In PERMA, you have P for positive emotion. Please see, it's not pleasure, it's positive emotion. E is for engagement, R is for relationships, M is for meaning, and A is for achievement. So it was seen that these 5 factors are the most important contributive factors for happiness in human life. Now just see this next slide. In the yogic view of happiness, they have discovered a very important fact. The fact has been put there in the form of an equation. Please see that. Stable vrittis and very similar pratyais, which means vritti is the modification born of a thought and pratyay is the actual content of the thought. When these two are very stable and similar, it generates a state called ekagrata, very high level concentration or the absorptive engagement into something, deep level flow. As a result, the object becomes dear. So any object you focus upon in this manner will become very dear to you. It will become very dear to your life, which means you have invested so much of vital energy into it that the object becomes precious to you. So this is actually the law of flow, you can say, the equation for flow. Wherever you have invested the highest amount of mind power in terms of vritti and pratyay, which means a high level of vital energy, their flow will be generated. As a result, the engagement produces deep level happiness. Any object becomes dear to you for that. You can take the classic example of mathematics. Many school students do not find it interesting. But once you have engaged yourself deeply with the subject for a long period of time, suddenly the mathematical problem and solution appear wonderful to you. You develop a natural affection for math. So this is the law which they discovered, and as a result, the 3 steps to happiness which yoga psychology will point out to is, first step is calm mind in focus mode. It is called Sajatiya Ekagra Vritti Pravaha. This is responsible for happiness. Second is the art of emptying your mind, which is called contentment. It is called Santosha in Sanskrit. This is essentially yoga, because it is only in the completely empty, decluttered mind that awareness can bloom fully. And that is why this is considered the second step to happiness. Please see the slide. The third step is the method of Maitri Karuna Mudita Upeksha, which means you keep away negativity by controlling response and reaction. Your reaction in every situation is only a mild positive response. So this is so very important for the mind to remain in a calm, focused state. So these are the 3 steps to happiness according to yoga. And each step has to be followed in every situation of life in order to maintain the yogic state, which is a state of high level awareness and at the same time great calmness. So if we can do this, then happiness is ensured according to yoga. Just look at the next slide. Here you have the yogic equations for happiness. Happiness, please watch the slide there. Happiness is proportional to concentration levels. Concentration on any object will yield engagement and hence happiness. With generation of flow comes complete absorption and a high degree of happiness. So the equation is actually the equation given in the definition of yoga. Yogastu chittavritti nirodh. Because in yoga, mind is considered to be thoughts floating upon an ocean of consciousness. And when you remove thoughts, so M is equal to T plus C. So C should be equal to M minus T, which is yoga. When you remove thoughts, you have consciousness. When you remove thoughts from the mind, consciousness should be left over, for the simple reason that in a yogic state, if you remove thoughts from the mind, it gets filled with awareness. That is why all the preconditions of yoga, that is why the actual meditative practice to achieve this state. So this is chitta vritti nirodh. To what effect? That you are successful in removing thoughts and remaining over as pure awareness. And happiness is directly proportional to awareness generated in the empty mind. So this is the yogic equation for happiness. Once we understand this, we will understand the validity, the importance of yoga in our lives. If you want to manufacture higher levels of happiness, well, the tamasic way to do that would be to collect objects and try to somehow extract a little happiness from them. But the sattvic mind will tell you the way to higher happiness is to generate the right state of mind, because happiness is a state of your mind. And that is by emptying mind and allowing awareness to manifest to the highest possible extent. Let us try to understand this equation. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.